Hello and welcome to Science Faction. And this is a special program. There's a reason for that name, which we'll get into in a second. But I'm Sylvia Henderson, and I am your host, so to speak. And the name of the program is Science Faction. And I'm excited about this because we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that's science fiction, but how it translates into reality. And how we've experienced science fiction and kind of seen it as imaginary, but it's really translated into some very real things in our lives today. And I'm going to show you a couple things before I introduce my guest. And some of this he's going to talk about a lot more, but I went digging in my basement, and I found my original cell phone, and I don't know that anything can get close up on. But if any of you are Star Trek fans, I don't know about Star Wars, whether they had the communicator or not. But as a Star Trek fan, I remember the communicator that Captain Kirk and all the rest used to use. My first cell phone, whoop, there it goes. My first cell phone did that. And I thought, oh, awesome. It's like the communicators on Star Trek. I even had the sound way back then that went, that little chirp. And I also dug around. I thought, what else is kind of like Star Trek? Well, I'm asthmatic, and I have one of these EpiPens, which you just pop off the cap and you shove it into your thigh. Well, way back on Star Trek, the medical people used to have this injector type thing that would inject whatever the medicine was, and without having to use a needle. And I thought, well, there really is a needle in there, but still, I thought, oh man, this is just like that injector in Star Trek. And one other thing, which you'll all recognize probably, and that is when they had to carry data around, they used to use little data transport thingy-bobbies. And that's what we use all the time, thumb drives. So I thought, awesome, these three items we use every day. And of course, our cell phones have evolved, but still, that excited me in terms of merging what I used to see on Star Trek back in the 60s and 70s and on forward, and how it blends in with what we use today. That's just a little tip of the iceberg about what we're going to talk about. And so my guest today, and for this really cool program, my guest is Robert Katz. So Robert, welcome.
Great. So excited to be here. I'm so honored. You are just so awesome. And you stole all my lines. You did a better job than I did. You're going to make me look bad.
No, not stealing lines, because I've already seen what you have, and it's like you're just going to expand on what I just held up and covered.
I'm going to try, but you're absolutely amazing. Yeah, it's really hard to believe science has caught up with us, or we caught up with science. I'm really not sure.
Yeah.
If it's art imitating life or life imitating art, or whichever. It's just really, as you say, it's really fascinating, and it actually happens not as quickly sometimes as we think it does, and we look back and go, wow, you're right. That's from, they had that 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Yep.
And we're just catching up.
Yep, on TV, and you're going to talk about a lot more of that. But first of all, what gives you the right to talk about this? What's your background?
Oh, well, one is watching
okay.
way too much television. Way too much television. And just like you, I was fascinated by everything I was seeing, and I was like soaking it up when I was little.
Probably
right?
So they can hear you.
Yeah. So, innovation comes from a lot of different places. It comes from watching way too much TV and imagining, right, all of these things before there was the science, 24-hour science shows, right? You had Star Trek to watch. But I've also really enjoyed sort of breaking out of my sort of mundane rocket science role, which is my day job as a rocket scientist.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is rocket science.
But rocket science isn't that hard, actually. That's easy compared to what I do on my weekends and evenings, right? Okay. As not my day job, which is I am privileged to be able to serve the community, not just during the day in terms of homeland security and defense and helping FEMA and the Pentagon and helping emergency response agencies, but as a firefighter paramedic, operator, instructor, and officer, in the evenings, I get to help people firsthand as well. So I am involved in basic just firefighting and paramedicine. I teach that, but I also am involved in a number of special rescue teams as well. And there's a hook to that in what we're going to talk about, which I'll get to a little bit. So I also sort of pull my science background and do a lot in the chem bio world as well. So I've actually been in nerve gas chambers and actually done work in with real sarin gas.
Wow.
And I've actually done jumped out of helicopters, did underwater dive rescue because so just to try to experience different ways of helping people.
Awesome.
And also to be able to use my science background into faction as well, science faction. So I've really been honored to do and really bring those worlds together, which we'll talk about in a second. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know you were that extensive into that kind of service. Cool. So you say science faction.
Yeah.
But you're about innovation.
Yep.
I'm about innovation and getting ideas out of people's heads and hearts to turn them to reality and to leave a legacy. How does that all tie together? Science and innovation and
exactly. Yeah. So innovation is how we bridge that gap and bring like what's in our mind into reality, and how we apply science that's science fiction and turn it into science faction. That innovation provides that key. And again, you remember Einstein, right? He had a lot of ideas in his head. We're actually, some of those now we're just actually proving. Now I could go into great detail on all of his many works and all of his mathematical equations, which as a mathematician, a physicist, I would love to do. But he would say otherwise.
That's
if
what
I did
Google's
that.
for.
Yeah,
exactly. People can find that out.
Yeah, and he would say otherwise about that. So we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to kind of look at how we apply this every day, and how we apply innovation techniques to create faction from science fiction. Yep, and then innovation is that key.
So I know at some point you're going to talk about, maybe real soon, innovation scares people sometimes.
Yep.
It especially seems to scare companies.
Right. Yep.
And businesses. I mean, they get, today the internet startups are really innovative, and they have no problem.
And there's a reason for that.
Okay.
There's a reason for that.
Okay.
Right?
Why?
Well, first of all, let's so what's the best way of learning, right? The best way of learning is to learn from other people's mistakes, right? Okay.
True.
So let's go ahead and do that, right? Let's take a look at some other people's mistakes, and then we'll see what the startups do and what our audience can do to not make those same mistakes and to bring innovation into their everyday life.
Okay, because I know there's a lot of big, companies and corporations that, I know you're going to get into this, that we've known and loved forever. I mean, I'm a baby boomer. So there were some names that I thought, oh, they'll never die.
Right.
And lo and behold, I pull out some of my credit cards that I used to use for them and think, doesn't apply anymore. They don't exist.
Yeah.
So, what's so scary? What's so scary about innovation?
So we're going to go into those. If we go way back, if you remember when people were trying to learn how to fly, right? Some of the techniques that they used that did and didn't work, and we're going to go see what companies used to do that. So let's think back. Let's think back at some of the brands that you say were household names. Now, it's going to be a quiz for our audience and for you to see if you can figure out what is the common threads, more than one common thread about these companies. Okay, so Kodak, right? Kodak was
film, camera,
right?
and film.
Exactly,
but we knew
camera and film. And where are they today? Gone.
I don't even know. Do they exist?
Zero. 175,000 people instantly vanished, right? Polaroid?
Same thing, film and cameras.
Yeah, gone, right? Gone.
Palm. Okay, now we're getting into my heart here because I had a Palm Pre.
So did I. Yeah.
And I loved that phone.
I adored it. Exactly. You're a geek too. Yes.
Right? A little bit.
Gone.
Okay.
Gone. Woolworths.
Oh yeah, we used to go there all the time.
Dime stores. They invented that whole market, right? The whole market of retail.
Yep.
Pan Am. Now Pan Am is still in a name, but but it's really gone as a company. They just bought the name, they resurrected it. They invented commercial airlines, commercial air flight, the whole service of commercial airlines. So some of these are products, some are services. Kenner for toys.
It's Kenner, it's fun.
Yeah, exactly. DEC, digital.
Oh my gosh,
They created the computers, they brought them into businesses, even more than IBM did, just widespread. Borders,
books,
we love that, right?
Yep.
Tower Records, the tower came down.
Loved going to get my records at Tower Records.
I know, we'll talk about that, unfortunately, yeah. E.F. Hutton, we'll get some services.
Are they gone?
Yeah, completely gone. So they created sort of the commercial financial services.
Yeah, they speak, you listen.
Man, wow, you can win the question. Here's a big one, Wang.
I'm a former IBMer. I remember some of these names.
Invented word processing. Like, how important is word processing today? But you had to have a dedicated machine to do it, right?
And that 10-inch disc.
Huge, yeah, remember? Oh, that was a real floppy disk. It was really floppy, remember? Zenith.
TV.
TV, gone, completely gone. Remember this one?
Yeah, Bell Howell. I remember this slide. No. What was the not slide projector, but
film strip?
Film strip projector,
yes.
That's right.
Right, so they completely gone. So think about those companies, right? You said that they're all gone, right? That's what's common. But is there any other commonality about them you can think?
The things I'm thinking of are they were all large companies.
They were huge.
No, I know there's still plenty of large companies that still exist.
Yeah.
But they were all large companies that I think dominated their market at the time.
Yes.
And
exactly.
I know when we get comfortable, this is sort of a lesson for entrepreneurs. When we get comfortable with success, and we don't keep trying to change and innovate, when we get comfortable with our success, we tend to let it.
And you end up being like them.
That's right. We tend to let things die.
It's even worse. Not only were they comfortable with their success, think about all the categories. We talked about film, we talked about video, we talked about financial services. They virtually created those industries.
True.
They were so innovative. They were the first, and then grew.
Yeah.
And then, as you correctly said, they got so complacent.
Like that word.
Complacent. And complacency is the enemy of everything. Almost everything we take our company's success for granted. We take our intelligence for granted. We stop learning. We take our relationships for granted. Not that I would take my relationship with you. I'm not going to take that for granted. But we tend to do that.
Yeah.
And we can't do that. We have to every day be constantly innovating, be grateful every day for our success, for our relationships, and not be complacent, or else we'll end up like all of those companies. Yep. So we're going to talk about examples from science on how to make sure that doesn't happen. And so you showed us a few, right? But many, as you say, many, many more.
But even before, so I keep thinking when I watch science fiction on TV, I watch Star Trek, Star Wars, whatever they may be, the shows may be, I never know, the question I always wonder is, did the technology or the possibility of the technology they show in the movies exist before the screenwriter thought to write it into the movie? Or did the writer come up with some imaginary thing, put it into the movie, and then the technology developed from that? It's like, which is the cart or the horse, the chicken or the egg?
So you're really smart, and you're really getting I should be interviewing you for this, because that is actually part of the key. That is one of the keys to why we can learn innovation from science fiction.
Okay.
So it's a little teaser for your audience to think about. But what you said is the part of the essence of why science fiction allows us to have a great lesson in innovation.
Okay, and I'm thinking science is one of the primary words in there.
Right. And you said something about motivation and inspiration. So think about those.
Okay.
Right. We're gonna now let's go ahead and look at some other examples that you gave. A little bit of some quiz for some of the people in the audience. We'll see if they know. So obviously an easy one from Star Trek. You remember this one, right?
Oh my gosh, that's the iPad and my Surface.
So they had the pad, right?
Which they called it a pad.
They called it a pad. Did you know that? Yeah. They even called it a pad, which was crazy. A personal access and display device, right?
Geez.
And the cursor turned into, I remember I went to Microsoft back in the mid-90s and tried to encourage them to do like a slate type thing. They said that was crazy. They said, who wants to do that? You can't type on it. It doesn't make any sense. You can't put it in your pocket. They thought it was a crazy idea, right? Yeah. So there's a time and a place for everything, and sometimes things are just ahead of their time, which I guess that one was. Our next one is an exciting one, right? Remember, what that is?
Is it the tricorder, or is that the medical?
Yeah, that's the medical. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Okay. So the tricorder, this happens to be the Tricorder IX, it's one of the advanced ones, right? That remotely could tell everything going on in your body, right?
Oh,
there's a sense, right? So do we have that today?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're really close. Now this does a lot more than the current technology does, but there's a number of technologies. As a matter of fact, there's a big X Prize going on for multiple millions of dollars to come up with one that is as capable as the one we saw in Star Trek. So,
wow.
I mean, imagine today, normally those things would be built by the government and lots of money from the government, and the government's been very active in some other areas, and we'll talk about those, but many of these, especially in the X Prize areas, are done by, innovators, like you said, people that are thinking up great ideas and going on Indiegogo and going on Amazon, and you fund it, and friends and family, and creating these products today. So so we're pretty close on the tricorder. How about the special glasses?
Yeah, I know, Jordy's things. I can't think of what they were called.
Yeah, so we go close up on there. So indeed, we do have just Bionic Eyes coming up. We're very, very soon you'll see where people will start to be able to see. We'll have artificial retinas. They're actually, the FDA is evaluating as we speak artificial retinas.
See, I was thinking you were going to say Google Glass or something, but this is even deeper.
It's even deeper, yeah. Yeah, I mean, so many of those things, and we think are like a fail. Oh, Google Glass didn't go anywhere, but a lot of those are actually stepping stones. To get to a later product, even whether we know it or not, right? Think about Palm. Palm actually is dead, but turned into something, right? It merged with the phone and became. We'll talk about that.
That's a point too. Yeah, when.
This is Lieutenant Commander Davis.
I'll let you.
Please access all Starfleet command orders
what about
to starships, star bases, and colonies.
Now what's he doing? He's talking to a computer.
Well, it's a computer talking to a computer.
Yeah, well, that's even weird, strange. Exactly. Oh, you're getting too deep for me here. So, what's he showing us there, right?
I think voice recognition.
Voice recognition,
yeah,
exactly.
Siri,
right, yeah,
whoever,
Cortana. People don't understand. That is really, really, really hard. That's really hard. I mean, how many times are you talking to a person you barely understand what they're saying? And sometimes, especially when you're listening to me.
True.
But you know what you're doing? You don't have to hear every word. You're filling it in based on your huge knowledge of hundreds of thousands of words and the context and the gestures and knowing that person. You're filling in all the kind of blanks that you may not quite hear exactly right, and the intonation, right, of whether they're going up or down. All is very, very subtle. The brain is so complex. To get a computer to even do a piece of that is very, very difficult. But as you say, Siri is finally starting to
yeah, because I remember working way back when I was at IBM. I remember we were working on early voice recognition, and in fact, some of the early software that you loaded on your home computer was a reflection of some of that early work, and it just. We thought it was cool beans, but it just would not pick up on the words.
Right,
you couldn't train it.
Yeah.
And I know that I stopped. If people would say, well. You need to use Dragon, whatever, speaking or something like that for software.
It still wasn't there, right?
And I thought, I type faster than that.
Yeah, yeah.
But interestingly, I just had somebody the other day, a friend of mine, has a tower that's sitting in his kitchen.
Yeah, yeah.
And he just started saying, "What's the weather today?"
Right.
And the thing started talking, and I thought, really?
Yeah.
So
that's it's amazing where it's going.
Yep.
It's amazing where it's going and how much situational awareness that has. So let's look at a few others quickly. You know what this is?
I'm nearsighted, so I need to see. Okay, there we go.
Echo Station 3TA.
Okay, those are the fighter robots on Star Wars,
yeah.
and of course R2-D2.
Exactly, R2-D2. So look at the way they walk, right? I mean, think back when this movie first came out, those were incredible. You're going, oh my gosh, we'll never have those kind of walking things. We have these big clunky tanks that would, wouldn't be able to do that, right? That's almost like an animal, right?
Yeah.
No way. But here you go. Boston Dynamics. Look at this guy.
Oh my gosh.
He doesn't care what the terrain is, and he's completely autonomous.
Oh wow.
And untethered.
Okay, that's a little scary.
And yeah, it's a little scary.
Okay,
and,
but
and he fetches, and he goes upstairs.
oh my goodness.
Better than I, yeah. Which is something even the Star Wars ones can't do.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
wow. Well, and they have what, wheelchairs now that go up steps,
Yeah.
rise and they go up steps.
Yeah, so it's amazing how it's creating so much mobility for people. It's really, really done amazing.
Well, the
things.
interesting thing with Star Wars too is, remember I said Data was a computer talking to a computer?
You're right.
So they had C-3PO
Yeah.
talking to, and he moved, and I know we're getting too geeky.
No, we're not. Actually, there's that. We're actually coming to that. You're getting too smart. You're ahead of me again. You're ahead of me again. Let's see if we have a few more.
And this is totally unrehearsed, folks.
Oh.
Totally unrehearsed.
You remember, think back. I mean, because again, there's one aspect. If you notice one aspect of this technology these days that's changed from a little bit back then. There's something that's going on in the environment, something in the air.
Well, I don't know whether you mean the speed
Yes,
with which,
exactly.
because I know we used
You're just so smart. The
Well, 'cause we
speed
used to-
is so fast.
Yeah, because we used to talk about change every 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
Then it became every 5 years.
Yeah,
and now it's like every month.
Yeah, I mean,
something
exactly.
new.
So it's like, if I search something that's like, advanced, like, oh yeah, whatever. It's like hard to impress people because they figure by tomorrow
Right.
they'll have it,
Right.
But I think back is like when we saw this. Remember when you mentioned R2D2 first gave this hologram, right? Of Princess Leia, save me. Like people were like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And
Now we have holograms that address people in the audience at conferences.
absolutely, and that's sing. Yeah, they're really
they're-
good.
okay.
Yeah.
My favorite.
Yeah,
All right.
I knew that was your favorite, didn't I? We talked about that,
I
didn't
don't
we?
know. Probably.
We didn't actually. I just guessed.
But also, he was an innovator.
Yeah.
Because as
Yeah.
a musician, he
Yes.
started to do things when we were all sitting there watching with our mouths wide open, like, oh my gosh, look at what Michael's doing.
Right. So actually, that's oh my gosh, that's another amazing point, that innovation isn't just about science either. It's not just about geeky stuff. Everybody can innovate, right? Everybody can innovate. I mean, Lady Gaga's an innovator, right, in music.
Yes.
And
Yeah, Madonna, Lady Gaga,
Madonna,
yeah.
they've been all innovating and pushing the needle, and really raising the bar and changing things up. And then we always try to follow, but at first we think, well, what's going on with them, right? They're like crazy. But no, they have something there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. I remember how we used to look at Liberace and Elton John and Madonna a little bit and go, whoa, they're out there. Now just about everybody has some wild thing going on in their acts.
Yep.
So,
yeah. I mean, we're going to almost come to expect
Mm-hmm.
it. So now we'll get down to some of
All
your
right, my
favorites, right?
phone.
Okay, your phone. And we kind of saved the best for last. We're like, well, it's just a phone, right? Just a phone. It does look almost exactly like yours, right?
That you were getting there, yeah.
Almost exactly like yours. But the thing is, sometimes reality is stranger than fiction. Because, like, we use this as a communicator, right? They used it as a communicator, but my gosh, what else do we do with it now?
Okay.
Like, practically everything. Like, who would have imagined that in this device, in that one thing, it's become our boombox, right? It's become our high-resolution camera. It's become our video camera,
Right.
It's become our calculator. Remember when you had to carry like all that stuff, right? Even people, you can use it to mix music with as a soundboard. You can use them now even as a projector, right? As a LCD projector. So it even went beyond what they were expecting in Star Trek for it to do.
So are you going to talk at all about, so what we're seeing here with the current, well, that's even old now, but that didn't just happen though. There were stages of innovation. First we had the cell phone, but then somebody had to figure out touchscreen.
Yep.
Somebody had to figure out an app. What the heck is an app?
Right.
From
Yeah.
software you downloaded in a computer.
Right.
So what that distance between the little cell phone and the current smartphones, there were some
There were some
things
steps.
in between
right,
there.
Right. And there were actually, so there are actually also many devices that we don't see that came into that gap. So a lot of this technology, as we remember, came from Japan. Japan, we used to think, and Taiwan and Asia used to be like crazy. Like the Walkman came from there. Sony, and we used to think about innovation, right? This crazy innovation. So if you actually walk down the streets of Japan and Taiwan and Taipei, which I used to do a lot, you would see, I think I was cool, right? I have the latest flip phone or the latest smartphone, and I'd see like 5-year-old school kids have gear that made mine look like a toy. So they actually were creating lots of different products and kind of seeing which ones would bubble to the top as being the most successful. And then they had a very high bar before they exported them to the U.S. because they had a brand to protect, right? So they wanted only the winners would go. So they kind of used their own national population and a lot of kids, a lot of school kids, to kind of see what would stick.
And those beta tests.
Those best ones, exactly. They use all those as a beta test. So essentially now things are almost moving so fast that you can almost do that in real time. You put something out there, if people don't like it, they're updating the software that night for you, right? So we have we can do that almost in real time. And essentially, there's some products out there that we all are the beta test for. We don't. So that's now. There's another phenomenon that happened here. As we said, we went way beyond just computing, and we said all those products. And this is what I focus on a lot, is the convergence of these technologies. As you correctly said, you said, well, now you have a touch screen in here, and now you have a camera in here, and you have a high resolution audio device. There's actually, some of them have 4 cameras in there, right? You have front and back, and you have ones that detect when you're looking at it, and ones that detect when you're holding it to you. So
oh my gosh.
It's integrating all these products together. As a matter of fact, if you think back, it has literally everything that used to be in a Radio Shack ad. So you remember a Radio Shack ad?
That's another company.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was destroyed by essentially that one device, because you don't have to go to Radio Shack and get your boombox, your audio device, your camera, your computer. You don't have to get your game console.
Yeah.
Your computer storage device.
Oh my God, your address books, all of this
exactly.
stuff.
Yeah. Remember the address book was a separate device?
Yep.
So that one device, that one converged device, or as I like to call hyper-converged device, hyper-convergence destroyed eventually that entire company, right? They just couldn't keep up. They couldn't change. Literally, you can't ship technology fast enough. You couldn't keep up. So completely gone. And I'm sure if we look back now, let's just rewind to some of those technologies and those businesses we talked about, many of them were destroyed by that hyperconvergence, right?
Yeah. And so,
That because
that's interesting. You've got Radio Shack up there. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Right. So you don't need all those. You don't need you don't need to go in and buy CDs anymore. You can just download it, right? You don't need to be able to have Bell and Howell have a video camera dedicated, because you have it on your phone. So that kind of hyper convergence, it at also, as you correctly say, hyper speeds.
Right.
Right.
And micro. I mean, it got smaller. And so that was the other thing.
Superminiaturization. Exactly. That was the other big thing that happened. Okay.
Now what? Okay, and you're about to ask a question here of me, probably, but of the audience. The other thing that comes to my mind in terms of innovation, two things, but because my mind is all over the place. I'm loving this stuff. The primary thing is, in order to make something happen sometimes, something else has to be in existence already. The cell phone, the communicator of Star Trek back in the 60s, 70s time frame, probably couldn't have been reality until data networks or cell towers or something came into existence.
Right.
This couldn't exist until Wi-Fi came into existence. So sometimes innovation is thwarted I think.
Right. It
Because
is.
something it needs
It
doesn't
is.
exist yet.
It is, but you're so smart. You're even getting closer
okay.
to this key. You're correct. It is. It is. It's thwarted in reality. It's thwarted. But there's there's a lesson to be learned there, because if we look at, again, science fiction, it doesn't have those constraints.
True.
Right?
True. Imagination is what.
Right. Exactly. So let's step back a second and look at how we can kind of maybe mimic and create some of that same innovation ourselves. So we have to remember some of the drivers of innovation first. So some of those drivers are, right, we always want to do more with less.
Okay,
right?
so keep calm.
Yeah, do more with less.
Do more with less, okay.
Okay, so let's look deep into our brain.
Okay,
and
we
let's
should see that on the big screen.
Yeah, so let's zoom in and take a look at a framework that I developed to help look at what the prerequisites are for innovation. So, the prerequisites are, there's a couple of steps, right? So first of all, you have to have plans in place, right? So you don't have to be super methodical, but you have to kind of have an idea where you want to go. You also then have to have preparation, right? So as you have to have certain knowledge either in yourself or your friends or within your network. We're going to talk about that in more detail here in a second. That's the second P. Then as part of this platform, right, this innovation platform, we want to have a mix of both public and private entity sectors working together. So government does a good job at some things and private sector does a good job at some things, and we need to work together. So we have in our P platform, we have plans, preparation, public, private sectors, right? We also want to have pupil, right? So that's the academic.
Okay.
The academic, we want to make sure students are involved. Students are great innovators, but we want to make sure that we're properly feeding that enthusiasm and not squashing it, right? Like many times you squash, oh, we can't do that because, oh, this network's not in place. Well, too bad. It will be. It will catch up. So those are great points that you mentioned.
Plus that crazy idea. Man, individuals are stymied so often by their families, their friends, or their boss.
Right.
Saying, oh, we can't do that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, not just with science. It's, I mean, many ideas. Yeah. But again, we need to push beyond that. So, so we want to have a platform, right? The platform, so we want to have that is sort of bringing all this framework together and look at processes. And we need to ultimately have a passion, right? So by putting plans, preparation, the public-private pupils into a platform process and bringing passion together, we ultimately can have an engine of innovation. Right? So those are some of the keys. Now, let's talk about that a little bit in now perspective. We're going to think back, okay, now we're going to start to get to some of that curiosity you had about, well, what comes first, the chicken or the egg here? And why is it that science fiction is so innovative, or are they, right? Okay, so think about, right, the first robot, right? Okay, think about the first robot.
He's not the first robot.
He's not the first robot. Who was the first robot?
I don't even remember. I don't know if that video will run, but Will Rogers.
Yeah.
Warning,
Danger,
Will Rogers.
Danger, exactly.
Yeah.
How about the first
cyborg?
Cyborg, yeah.
What was his name? Arnold.
Arnold Schwarzenegger was one. We also had them back in Star Wars as well. True. Right? The killer ones, because these were autonomous. Okay. These were autonomous, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger, I guess, still had some.
I don't remember his.
To him. Okay. So.
Okay. Now this is what scares everybody today.
Exactly. So where did this begin? Is this the first autonomous vehicle, you think?
Oh, probably not. No, because I remember seeing movies where these cars are they're all on tracks or something, and it's that City of Tomorrow. In fact, Disneyland and the City of Tomorrow were. Oh my gosh!
There you go.
Disney.
Yeah. Isn't that your first autonomous vehicle?
Nobody drove him, did they?
No.
I forgot all about that.
See?
Wow. Okay, this is showing me something else too. And I know I just took you off track a little. I'm taking you off track a little
Literally
bit.
off track. That's a pun with vehicles, right?
I'm also thinking about how we portray innovation. How many movies are darkly portraying
As something scary or something?
yeah, the robots are scary, and I'm thinking,
Correct.
I'm also a Stephen King fan, so so I think about Christine, which was the car that drove itself, but it was evil.
Right,
and
right.
there were other depictions of evil. There were old sci-fi movies where the robots are taking over the world, and that's a bad thing.
Right.
And so it's interesting how Disney portrays
Yeah.
the car as something good,
But-
but King portrays Christine as a
And which
evil.
one did you remember?
I actually remember Christine
Right.
because it was
no,
evil.
there's a reason for that.
Oh,
It's
okay.
not your fault. It's not your fault. Your
Interesting.
brain, and this is a whole other show you're going to invite me on. Your brain is wired to remember, unfortunately, the bad and scary
Well,
stuff.
that's why the news is so. That's why
Your brain is wired. It's a survival trait that we've kind of been put inside of us.
the fight, flight, or fright.
Yeah, it's
or-
that something that's going to be a danger to your life is meant to cause more reaction than positive. And neuroscience has shown that we will work 9 times as hard, 9.4 times as hard to prevent a pain than to get a pleasure. It's that survival, and so we don't really have a choice. So you tend to remember the negative things.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's just, all you remember is the bad things I do. Well, yeah, that's just the way it is. I mean, that's just science, unfortunately, the way your brain's wired. And it does play into this. But that wasn't, so that was the first autonomous vehicle. So let's just have a little fun here. There was a 2.0 version of the autonomous vehicle. It wasn't this one. Do you remember what it was?
Ooh.
Wasn't
No.
Christine. But I always talk about the good stuff, right?
Uh-oh, this may be one I haven't watched.
You were a Knight Rider, Kit?
I never watched that, but yes.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, so 2.0. So
Okay.
Herbie Lovebug was the first, and then you got the second, right?
All right, there's some viewers caught on, but
Yeah,
I didn't. I never
yeah.
watched that one.
Again, other examples where our imagination and science fiction has sort of then eventually caught up and turned
To
into
be
reality.
fact, yeah.
So how far back do we go with drones, with flying drones? How do you think? When was the first real one that happened?
I want to say those balloons that flew, but they had people in them. Not the Hindenburg, but that kind of a thing.
Yeah, so they just fly,
Don't remember the first drone.
Oh, you'll probably remember this one.
Okay. Beverly Hillbilly? Well, no, that's not them, but oh, that's a Disney movie. I never watched that. I never saw that. But,
Oh, you never saw Chitty Chitty Bang Bang?
No. Oh, maybe I did. Bang, bang, chitty, chitty,
Yeah,
bang. Oh, okay, I guess I did.
Look, it's flying by itself.
Interesting.
I mean, I'm pulling your leg.
I know,
it wasn't
but
real,
interesting.
but you see, they were imagining this stuff back then. And again, think about it. They were imagining, and it turned to reality. But why were they imagining it? Think about it. Think about it. Okay. So here's our almost last one, right? Okay. So how far back? This is a thinking machine, right? Right. A cognitive.
Oh, I thought you were talking about just the show, but okay, the
No,
machine.
the machine.
Oh, in
your
the middle,
Jeopardy.
in the
Yeah,
middle.
yeah.
I read
Watson.
about that.
Right, Watson.
Well, IBM, Watson,
Right,
yes.
the beat. So, and this brings up, I'll go back to the companies that don't exist anymore. So,
Well, I'm thinking about the rooms it took. I'm thinking about the
Yeah.
rooms it took when I first worked at IBM,
yeah.
but way before.
It
I'm not that
was-
old.
well, it wasn't that long ago they still had rooms.
But it took an entire room
Right.
for the computing power of somebody's.
Of what we
I don't
watch.
have one,
Right,
but
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. And I mean, the spacecraft that I built at NASA back when I was a real rocket scientist, the spacecraft had less computing power, because some of them are still up there, have less computing power than my toaster.
wow.
My toaster has more computing power than the satellite that's going outside the universe right now. Unbelievable, unbelievable. So if we look at Watson, so IBM, to their credit, was a company that's not on the list before. It could have been.
They were close.
They were
a few
close.
years ago.
Very, very close. Many times they were.
No, that's true.
And
That's
they
true.
and they still they are a mere shadow of
Right.
themselves they were before. But still around because they were able to pivot.
Yes.
And they pivot and turn from a hardware, software, computer. They're not even a computer company anymore. They are a cognitive cloud company now.
Well, before they were computers, now this is my IBM, and they were time clocks.
Yes, cash registers.
They did rifles during World War
Wow.
I. Yeah, people don't know that.
Wow.
And weight machines and the whole bit. And so you're right.
They did multiple
Constant
pivots. Good for them.
Evolving.
Good
yeah.
for them. And you know, from being there, they did have a culture of innovation.
Yes.
They did, and that helped them. But we're going to talk about that a little bit in terms of companies and how we can help all of our people in our audience get that same kind of innovation.
Because I know sometimes a lot of people who I work with in my coaching and my consulting are not the internet startup types. Some
Yes.
are. I'm starting to work
Sure.
more with them. But they're the, quote, everyday people
Sure.
who say, I've got an idea. I've got something that's, it's in my head, it's in my heart, I want to make a difference.
Yep.
But it's just little old me.
That's
I can't make that happen.
right. We need to stop that. They need to uncork that, right? Because it's not just in science, and it's not just people that we call entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
We need to kind of unleash what I call people-powered innovation, right? The innovation that's lying inside of everybody, and we need to unleash that, just the way we unleash the science and the science fiction, and that's what we really want to focus on.
Okay.
So think about that.
Okay.
So we'll go
back to our machine on the
Watson.
game show.
So what was the first AI system, even before Watson? You remember?
I'm sure I will when I see it, but I can't think of. Cause there was a machine that played chess, and everybody had this.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't
2001.
do
Hal.
Yeah. You remember Hal?
See, and that was also a scary depiction, though.
Yeah.
Because Hal took over.
He did. Yeah, it did. Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You never know whether to call it.
And it's even scarier if you look at what Hal, H-A-L, right? And if you add
Yeah.
one letter to each, you add the next letter after H, A, and L.
I heard that somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. So there's some
heard that
conspiracy
somewhere.
there, or
Okay,
just some
idea-
cuteness
okay.
there, whatever. But yeah, you saw. So they made it scary, which kind of can inhibit people, but also helps you remember. Again, we said we kind of remember those. So it did take over, right? It did take over, and eventually, we caught up. We eventually. We actually is stronger than that now. They're actually looking at ones that self-replicate and can kind of and learn, right? It's really not something we thought that they could put all those together, and it becomes really powerful. And there's two schools of thought out there. There's one that's this is great, it's all good, and there are people that have some ominous potential predictions that are afraid of. But we've always, as humans, we've always stepped up.
I'm thinking the air traffic when a plane flies itself. That basically is automation taking over, and it's supposedly for the good of humans,
right?
Not for the bad.
Absolutely. Well, it is. So, people are saying, "Oh, I'm scared to get in that car. I'm scared to get in that little car and have it drive myself." And I've seen people in Silicon Valley when I go out there a lot, and they're like, "Well, they get in the first time," and they're kind of like, freaked out by it. But if only they knew, again, as you say, because you're so smart, your plane. Do you want to guess in an average 3-hour plane flight how much it's man versus machine?
I'm going to say it 2.5 hours in there. The FAA used to be one of my clients. So
Oh, okay.
I'm a little
And
cheating
probably
on that. But I'd say
then,
about somewhere between 2.5 hours.
So a pilot's lucky to get 2.5 minutes of stick time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. 2.5 minutes. He's lucky to get that, and maybe that's why he needs to brush up and train. So it's mostly by machine. It's that big, with all those people and all that life and all that safety involved. Machines are doing it now. In fact, not to kind of bust any bubbles, and there's a new movie coming out soon of a Scully who landed in the water, right?
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
And so, and the problem, it was amazing, right? Amazing, he saved those people's lives. Do you remember, as he was making that approach into the water, he he was so smart. He knew all the other airfields around, and he thought about what it would take to go to any of those other ones. And if you listen to the tape, they were shouting out, "Have you tried here? Try here." The air traffic controllers were recommending other, and he said, "No, no, no, no. I've already, I can't make it. Can't make it." Somebody said. Well, they ran the tape essentially. They ran the numbers, and he actually could have.
Oh, okay.
This is where computers can come in and they can help you out by, they would be able to do the calculation of, time and distance and wind speed and fuel and performance level of the aircraft and all that it would take him even, 30 seconds. A computer could do like that. And then he could take that information and he could make a decision with it. So we have to figure out the right place, right, for computers. I'm not saying they could have made that landing though, but we have to kind of realize how man-machine interact, and we're still working that out, as you correctly said. It's still an area that we're definitely working out. So let's think about a little bit what kind of drives these people who are innovative to be so innovative. And you mentioned some startups and small businesses, or we can let's go back and talk about some of those companies that don't exist anymore and what stopped them from being innovative, okay?
Okay.
So one of the things you said, they got complacent, right? And that was exactly right. That's awesome.
They got happy with success and they
yeah,
didn't.
Exactly. And, because they have something to lose. They say, well, this works, so I change it, right? So how about an entrepreneur, right? Somebody that's starting out in their basement. How about them? Or can they be complacent? Well, they don't have anything to lose, right?
Right, at that start.
Yeah.
But how many times do we see, we used to think Apple was like, when they first started, it was like, well, all these people that started in garages, and they were mostly computer companies, HP, Microsoft, Apple, all those companies where it's just two guys, mostly guys, but just two guys in a garage. And that's you and me, that's the everybody kind of thing. And then they grew, and then they got complacent.
Yeah, yeah. So that, again, like all those companies we saw, they got complacent. Well, so partly there's a dynamic there that I've investigated and I've looked at, is, when you are starting up and you're creating all these innovative ideas, what's your hiring process? Like, what's your HR look like, and how do you screen the people that are going to come join your team?
I'm thinking early on you're looking for people like you.
So
who also see a vision, or also.
Oh, okay, so I agree to see a vision, but how about in terms of like their backgrounds, like what's the screening? What's like the test that you take and all of that? You kind of are like whoever's willing to help, right?
Okay.
Yeah, like you'll take whoever's willing to help. You'll take. They have to have the vision. You're right, like you for the vision, but their background,
True.
You'll take anybody, right? Like your corporate culture is, well, just come on, like join us, we have the passion, right? But what that does is it gives you a lot of diversity, right? But as you get bigger into a company, I think the diversity actually goes away.
Yeah.
As you get more people, the diversity goes away. What happens is you start to, a corporate culture starts to emerge. And what's the thing you go when you hire? Well, I'm going to hire that person and see if they are a good
fit.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what the beginning of the end starts.
And groupthink is another term I hear.
Yeah. So a good fit means they fit the culture.
Yeah.
And what's that mean? They think
Conform.
the same and they conform. And so do you think, for instance, that Kodak would hired someone that was like a digital enthusiast, like a digital photography enthusiast? No, they're like, we're film people here. You have to believe in film. Yeah. We're not going to hire you,
They
right?
did eventually, but it was too late.
Right, it's too late. Yeah, exactly. They're like, or how about, Borders, where they hire, a big internet ebook person? No, like, what's all that, kind of stuff. We want people that are a good fit, right? So they get big, and then they want to maintain that culture. And that's the beginning of the end. So although they may have diversity on the outside, right, they don't necessarily have diversity on the inside. Diversity, as I say, is only skin deep. You need diversity of thought, diversity of ideas, diversity of background, and they typically have really great HR processes that screen that out and get rid of that, right? And sometimes it's self-selecting, right? Sometimes like a real crazy, wild thinking person or a person that's going to be thinking outside the norm is just not going to feel comfortable. So I'm not going to totally say it's a company's fault. Sometimes they create an animal and then they don't make themselves inviting to people that have diversity of thought.
The other thing I noticed with all of the Star Trek folks, or any of them, the leadership inhibits sometimes that innovation.
Yeah.
For those who know Star Trek, Picard and Riker, his number 2, Kirk and Spock, they butted heads a lot because they each thought differently, and that was a good thing.
Yeah,
because it was a check and balance.
But so think about it. At least he felt comfortable enough to speak up. So for you to butt heads, at least means he's speaking his mind. And guess what? They kept him around.
Yeah, and the other guy, the one in charge, had to be confident enough to
exactly. So
encourage that.
Now, in a normal, sort of your average type of work environment, you'd either have a situation where that person wouldn't feel comfortable about speaking up, right? Because he doesn't want to get reprimanded, he doesn't want to lose his job, he doesn't want to even be wrong. Like even if they're willing to listen, maybe he's afraid to be wrong. So you have an environment that doesn't tolerate risk-taking and doesn't tolerate failure, which again, if you do that, you're going to end up like all those companies we saw. So that's a very good point. They feel comfortable, because again, a lot of it starts in that culture even before that interaction happens. That he felt comfortable getting in that butting heads mode, right? He felt comfortable about speaking his mind. So that's a good thing that he felt that way. And the fact that he butted heads means that, just like you see there, they had diversity that was both on the outside and the inside. Or else, if he didn't butt heads, you would have diversity only on the outside. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've seen organizations where you do have the white guys, the black guys, the women, the men, but the environment has them all the same.
It's all homogeneous. Exactly. Yeah. And again, HR does a wonderful job of screening out anybody that's truly different and wants everybody to basically have the same culture. And it's going to be a good, what was that word?
Fit.
Which is bury your company in the ground with Polaroid right now once you say that. It's just really, really bad. And that's why startups tend to have that burst of success, because they're like, take anybody. Like, come on, you're willing to help out? Like, because they don't have an HR, right? You're just willing to help, and you have that passion, as you say, come join me, and it helps boost them. And that, but again, once they become a victim of their own success, when they become too established. So that's the first D. We have a couple Ds here, right? Because I'm not smart enough to think about an acronym which has multiple letters, right? Like MASH, MAS. They all have to be the same D, right?
Yep.
Okay, so the diversity is the first D that helps drive innovation. Okay. So let's take a look here at the second one. See if you can guess what the second D is. It's not demolition.
I'm thinking dynamite, but
there you were. So it's dire situations, right? Dire situations.
That Enterprise got blown up every movie from there.
Exactly. And they kept trying to make it not be blown up. But so they kept getting into dire situations. So when people, like you said, those companies got successful, they stopped being innovative. Why? Because they didn't have to, right? They were comfortable, right? They were comfortable. So we tend to see a lot of innovation in people, in companies, and families, in countries, in platoons that are in the military when they're in a dire situation. Going back to the neuroscience, your animal instincts kick in, and your survival instincts kick in, and your juices start flowing, because this is do or die for you. And it forces you to be more innovative. I mean, and I can prove that to you here in a second, but go ahead, you were saying.
No, and as I was trying to get, I just had the thought that getting away from tech, because that's what we tend to think of in terms of innovation. Right. But when you look around, no matter where you are and what you're doing, everything exists because somebody had an idea. And the dire straits made me think about even back in slavery, American slavery days, when the cotton gin was invented. And, well, why was it invented? Well, because people were tired of, it was dire. They were tired of their hands being destroyed. And so somebody invented a machine to help with that. So that's new technology back then. Think about all the other things that were developed and invented because somebody had a need, which I hear you translating as dire.
Right, because I have to have a D word.
Yeah, I know, but still, so that kind of just brought it back to even beyond tech.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's definitely beyond tech. It's so and part of, so it gets back to that complacency. Even as a society in general, we're very blessed to be here in the United States, and we have so much abundance of so many things, overabundance of some things, and it has stifled the innovation which we need to get back to, because in our early days we were much stronger, and that's why you see sometimes we welcome new immigrants to our country, and they're used to dealing with nothing, they're used to having nothing, and their creative juices are still flowing. And ours, we need to get back to that.
So we've almost reached that complacent point as a society.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And that's part of where I got my name as innovation evangelist. People come because I am so passionate about helping turn that around.
Okay.
Turn around in our community and in our country.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So okay, we had dire. So here we go.
Right. So we also. So what's another D?
Okay, that just looks like destruction.
Yeah. Okay. To prevent
demolition.
Exactly. So so we tend to be very, very resourceful, right? When we have a strong demand. When there's a strong demand, we tend to step up to that. So when we're about to be crushed, right? Now I just love. This is now a Disney franchise, where it wasn't before. Oh. Yeah, they bought Star Wars. But some people say, well, Robert, you really mean damsel in distress here, don't you? Right? But that was the fun thing about Star Up, why I really liked it, is because remember, it's like she always saved the day.
Okay.
Like it was always the women that saved the day and end up saving the guy. So that's how innovative Star Trek and Star Wars was. Is that they come in and Luke Skywalker's going to save the day and save her, and she's a damsel in distress, and it's never that way in reality. She's the brains behind the operation. So in here, she brought that resourcefulness, again, the other D, demand, to be able to rise to that situation. Okay. And neuroscience shows us that you probably wouldn't have been that creative had that demand not been there, and had that dire situation not been there. So our chemicals or hormones within our body are simply programmed differently when we're in a non-threatening state. So do you hear people say often, or do you ever hear, well, I work better under stress? Mm-hmm. Right?
All the time.
All right. How about people say, if I started studying a week ago instead of like the night before the test, gosh, I could have done so well. No, they wouldn't, because there's no way they would have started a week ago. That's me. Because they didn't have that dire straits and that demand of the test the next day.
Okay.
Because what that does, it actually releases norepinephrine, releases chemicals into your blood that allows you to hyper focus at the expense of other bodily functions. We have two types of nervous systems, right? We have a sympathetic and an autonomic nervous system, and it so they switch off depending on what we need. You said fight or flight, and that's true. So have you ever noticed when you're in those stress situations, or like you're running, they're running a marathon, how can they do like 4 or 5 hours without eating, right? Or without going to the bathroom, without like the normal survival things? Well, that's because your sympathetic nervous system actually kicks in by those hormones, you're hyper-focusing. And similarly on a test, you know, your life isn't in danger for you passing that test.
True.
But your body doesn't know the difference.
Okay.
Because that's how it's programmed to respond to stress. So to your body, when it reacts to stress, it's normally to survive an attack from a saber-toothed tiger, so you don't become its lunch.
Right.
You have a big exam the next day or a big interview, your body reacts the same.
Interesting. Didn't know that.
And so
It's like the mother that picks up the car when they're
exactly. So you have that similar fight or flight. It's the exact same when it kicks in, and it gives you that hyper focus.
Okay.
And it creates again that innovation, because you're thinking of all these ways to survive, and that's your
Awesome.
third D. Yeah.
Awesome.
My favorite D.
Oh,
What do you think that D is? Another strong emotion.
Yeah, but it doesn't begin with a D, so love. But
Desire.
Oh, okay.
Right? Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, desire. We want to be part of a community, and we want to fulfill our responsibility of helping take care of others and our loved ones.
Okay.
And that we know is a strong motivator, right? We know that we will do almost anything for our friends and family, and that allows us to be innovative. We think of ways, if we get into a bind, well, you know, okay, if it's just some stranger, I'll do something to help them. But if it's somebody, you know, we have desire, we have strong affection for our community, we really want to work hard for them. So we unfortunately, though, have lost part of that, and we want to get back to that. We used to be stronger in America in terms of feeling as part of a community. So I'm hoping we can get back to that, and that's also going to help create more innovation, because you're like, well, you know, I want to do my part. I want to let let everybody down. I'm going to step up. I'm going to think of new ideas. So it's a really important part of the innovation equation.
Okay, we see that in an up-down cycle when there's a flood, when there's a fire, when there's something like that, when the towers came down, all of that. But then we go back to...
It dissipates quickly,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we need to kind of get back to that, I think. Yeah.
What else have we got this week?
Well, more desire.
All right.
Yeah, all kinds of desires.
Well, Kirk, I mean, he was one desired guy, so yeah.
Right, even by his brethren.
Yes.
We have to, people to everybody. All right. So I think we've seen, right, that it's innovation is something that we can kind of reach down inside. Everybody can do, right?
Okay.
If you can have these aliens doing, 100 years ago, right? We look inside our brain. We can look at bringing the D's together. We can look at becoming part of a community. We can look at getting true diversity of thought, diversity of culture, right? Not just on the outside, but also on the inside. Right. We can, we actually sometimes look at self-imposing, maybe fool ourselves into a dire situation to kind of spur that. So, like maybe pretend that your test is today, right? Or pretend that this is due today. It's really due Friday, but really like put it in your calendar and pretend that it's really due, and even do a practice one, so that you create that situation so that you don't have to wait a week, So we need to kind of maybe trick ourselves into creating that innovation environment with all of those, bringing those D's together.
Okay.
So what I want to do, though, I want to go back to what the great question you had at the beginning, and you were like, wow, what about science fiction that creates all this innovation that we don't necessarily see in our everyday life?
Okay.
So any clues, any hints here that you can think about?
See, I think need again. I know that a lot of what we have is a result of military need. And a lot of things that were developed by the military become what we use in medicine, which then becomes what we use in everyday life. But I still wonder, how did that screenwriter think about something that just seems so off the chart to the rest of us?
Okay, so here's the key. The reason was he was like a startup. he didn't have anything to lose. He didn't even have to follow any rules. He didn't even have to follow the rules of science and physics. He had a blank slate. And who did he have to say, oh, you can't do that, that doesn't make sense, that's not going to work? Nobody. Because they were free, unbridled by reality, to think outside the box, to truly think outside the box. As a matter of fact, they were encouraged to do so. And when they were encouraged to do so and unbridled by the restraints of current technology or resources or their everyday responsibilities, it freed their mind to create these incredible innovations, right, that eventually all became reality. But the key to thinking of them for them was to break outside that bubble of constraint of reality and say, well, you know what, I have this phone and I'm going to create some way to kind of communicate with it, and I'm just going to think it. So I was like, well, you can't do that. That doesn't make any sense, right? You have to type it in. That's the way we do things now. Okay, I'll type it in. But, you know, on a science fiction show, they wouldn't do that. No one would say, you can't do that. Sure. They'd say, go ahead, that's cool. We need to do that more in our everyday life, in our home, in our school, in our work, in our community. And we need to create those environments where people are safe to think outside the box, just like those science fiction writers, so that they're not squashed, as you said. That's the key. That's why they didn't have to make their budget numbers. They didn't have to, like, you know, stand up to the boss the next day in the meeting or have someone say they're crazy. And that was to the benefit of everybody, because those help drive those realities. I mean, think about it. The fact that they envisioned the concept of a communicator, I mean, we know that drove, wow, that's something I want to aspire to. So we need to create that in our everyday life, where we think about the range of possibilities, and we use that, right, to drive our everyday innovation.
Cool.
And then we can be as cool as science fiction.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So is there a sort of last things you want to say, or how we pull this all together? I see this picture.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
So
this picture is...
So do you know what this picture is?
Okay, I am blessed with nearsightedness, so
Awesome. Okay.
I can't see it.
So let's go back to where we started. We initially, when we first came in, we saw pictures of the people trying to create the first flying machines.
Okay. Oh, okay. That looks like the Wright brothers.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So we think about people were trying for years and years and years and years to fly. Right?
Oh my gosh! How many times do we see they have the balloon thing?
Right.
That's,
Exactly.
And then the helmet. What is the guy with the jetpack?
Yeah. Exactly. So. But all those people were people that came from, so a lot of things that looked like cars or looked like balloons. So they had all these people that were kind of in the industry, right? They were kind of building cars, and they said, I'm going to build a car that flies, right? That was sort of the common, I need a car that flies, and that would be like an airplane. So what was it about the Wright brothers that allowed them to be successful and innovate?
I mean, they had a vision. I don't know how to
right. The other people
solidify.
Did. What was their trade?
I don't remember.
Bicycles.
Okay.
Bicycles. Okay. Right. So they came out from left field. They weren't part of what was the military-industrial complex back then. They came literally from left field and said, well, let's look at this from a totally different perspective. And when they do that, right, that's an example of innovation. Right. They were thinking unconstrained, outside the box. You know, they didn't have anything to lose, because it was only up for them. And a lot of the principles that we talked about, they embraced the being unconstrained. And just like a science fiction writer, they took their idea and persevered, had desire, and guess what? It took off, and to the benefit of us all. But what's next?
Oh, who knows? What was
Exactly.
it? To infinity and
Exactly.
beyond,
So the
as
sky
what's his name says.
is the limit. The sky is the limit.
Oh, Jackson,
Right. And we haven't reached this one yet. Almost everything we've shown you, we've actually reached. But I thought I would show you one that we aren't quite there yet.
Too funny.
But we're almost there. Almost there. And just think about how this is going to change and revolutionize everything we do, not just transportation, but where we live, where we play, where we work, how we operate, right? It's more than just transportation. It's a whole way of life. Right? That's just about to change.
Oh, wow. Too funny.
That, I can't thank you enough for this wonderful, wonderful time having me here. I'm so honored to be part of your community.
I'm so intrigued. Well, it's
it's just awesome.
It's
really.
all about
And your wonderful
ideas.
crew here. Everybody's just been so fantastic here.
Great, thanks. And it's all about ideas, though. And I don't, for as much as I work with entrepreneurs, both in the strategies and the systems for getting their ideas out and into the world, and working with entrepreneurs who want to pitch and talk about, give their messaging so that they can get funded so that they can do these things. I am always intrigued by inventions and by how I see something new and I think, I remember seeing that back on fill in the blank. And again, because I'm Trekkie, on Star Trek or Star Wars, but Star Trek. And I think, or on Lost in Space or whatever used to come on at 1 a.m. I can't think of the Doctor Who and all of those. And how you see these things now and you think, wow. I remember when that happened back then.
Yeah.
So when I met you and you talked about this topic, I thought, whoa, I want to bring this to the community that I'm in because it's about collaboration.
Yep.
We're about innovation.
Yep.
We're about getting our ideas out. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
So how do people reach you or learn more about this if they want to?
Well, they can come to you, and we can
Refer
work
them to me?
together.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So my website is katz.pro, katz.pro. Robert at katz.pro, or just see you, and we will collaborate together to help them out.
Do you speak to groups on this? Do you do this presentation?
Well, I haven't done this one before because I did it because you asked me.
Because I asked you, okay.
So I pulled it together because I would do anything for you.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
But I, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about getting this message out because I really want to help unlock what's locked inside of everybody. Is that ability to imagine, to expand, to explore, and ultimately to innovate.
All right. To seek out new life and new civilization and boldly go where no one went before.
Absolutely.
I hope that's not copyrighted. So with that, thank you so much,
Thank
Robert.
you so much.
And all I can say to you who are watching this is step outside your box, go back and look at the P's. I don't remember how many P's you had. Look at the D's that he mentioned and innovate. If you've got an idea, find a way, whether it's through me or Robert or whoever, find a way to make it real because we need your ideas. You want probably to be significant in the world, and that's the way to do that, to get your ideas out. They're not crazy ideas. They're just ideas that may need some tweaking, some trial, some error, and they keep going. So
and keep with it.
That's right, and there should be some great quote that I should end with, and I can't think of one, so I'm just going to say, unless you've got a quote.
It's do exactly what you said, but do it now and do it quickly because, as again you said, things are moving so fast.
Yep.
We have the need for speed like we've never had before.
All
so
right.
the need for speed, just get up off the couch and just do it.
So I'm going to end with, what's your idea?